We started by questioning why does one take to these sensual pleasures. We said because there is a instant sense gratification. There is a natural push from the senses to the sense objects. There is a push from within, and there's a pull from the world outside. As a result of which, of the push and pull, many people are drawn to the objects which are almost seemingly so designed for your downfall. And then we all fall for the attractions, the temptations of the external world. As a result of which, majority of people lead an indulgent life. Majority of people lead a life of licentiousness. So you can be not wrong to say majority of people are indulging in the pleasures of the world, giving themselves a reckless approach to the contact of the world. And a small minority of people are afraid of this, the senses, because thanks to verses like this, they have misunderstood and they have completely shunned the world out of fear. They refrained from contact and they get into a self-imposed abstinence. So there are two extremities people take to. One set of people, the majority of them, they are indulging. A small minority of people are abstaining. Now, either of two is not right. Neither should you indulge in the objects of the world, nor is there a necessity for you to unnecessarily abstain and punish yourself. Therefore, what is required is that there is a middle path. In fact, isn't there a middle path in everything in life? So in the language, what we often use, those who refrain from the senses are tamasic people. Those who are indulging in the senses are the rajasic people. Those who lead a life of middle path are leading a life of sattva. A sattvic person leads a life of self-control. And I remember sharing this verse to you all, intending to expand ragadvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indriyaishcharan atmavashaihi vidheyatma. Mark these two words. He says atmavashaihi vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. You get the prasada, you attain peace when you live a life of self-control. And I'm falling back on the second chapter of the Gita, the 64th verse, because here is a direct reference to what it is to live a life of middle path, what it is to live a life of self-control. So here he says a self-controlled person who is free from likes and dislikes, moving among objects with his senses under control, attains peace. So fundamentally, it is very important that we don't misunderstand the text. The text is not advocating us to avoid any sense contact. It's not saying that you should avoid contact, nor is it saying that you should force yourself out from the contact with the world. Because in fact, the law of life is you should never force yourself to do anything. The moment you force yourself, it's unnatural. But there has to be a natural application, a healthy application of conscious withdrawal. There's no forced withdrawal, a conscious withdrawal. That's acceptable. Now, what is the two important elements the verse talks about self-control? He gives us the license to be amid sense objects. So a man of self-control is freely moving among the objects of the world. There is no restriction as externally imposed, because the Vedantic study believes that no external impositions is going to work. No do's and don'ts. So Vedanta does not give you a loose list of do's and don'ts to lead a Vedantic life. So you can do what you think is right. If you think something is not right, that's your prerogative. What is right for me may not be right for you. What is good for you may be detrimental for me. And what is detrimental for me may be beneficial to you. So who is to sit and decide what is right or wrong for you? Since it is subjective, the Shastras do not give a list of do's and don'ts. They don't give an adesha. An adesha means an order. They only give an upadesha. They give you an advice for you to take it to your own consideration and apply it. The Shastras don't give adesha. Adesha is meant for those who can't think. If others can't think, you do this. But if you can think for yourself, why should I tell you what to do? So there are no externally imposed do's and don'ts. So you have the freedom and license to contact the sense objects, but they are only telling us the modus operandi. How should you contact the sense objects? The two self-controls. The first self-control is you must not operate on your likes and dislikes. Ragadvesha viyuktaha. You should never ever contact the sense objects based on your likes and dislikes, and the likes and dislikes belong to the realm of your mind. So the mind consists of the likes and dislikes. So the first thing is don't act on likes and dislikes. So the moment you act on likes and dislikes, you have violated self-control. It is not what you do, it's how you do it. So the moment you do something because you like it, or the moment you avoid something because you dislike it, first violation. And then he says the second self-control is after the experience, the mind should not create new likes and dislikes. After the experience, your mind should not create fresh likes and dislikes. These are the two fundamental principles of contact with the world. This is the middle path. Do not act on your likes and dislikes. Don't go about creating fresh likes and dislikes. It may sound simple, but I tell you, if you practice this, you're a master. In order to practice this, what is it that you need? Sriniji, if I can ask you, in order to practice this.
Ram Guruji, I think you need control of the mind. But I really want to probe this, what the Shastra has just said, that, you experience life with basically not based on likes and dislikes, not creating new likes and dislikes. So what is your contact with the experience or the world? What does it look like? So I don't like it or dislike it. I get that. You don't create new. I get that. So what does a normal experience look like?
A normal
which is
experience,
considered sattvic,
which you rightly said. So therefore the question was, therefore, in order to establish the right contact, we get the clear indication that you cannot afford to operate on the mind. All right.
Yep.
Now, why is it that they are saying that? You remember what we shared last week? You remember that, sir?
The false happiness, sattvic happiness? Or...
Yes. I'm just wanting to share. Why is this coming? Oops, 1 minute, please. Oh, always this seems to be coming up. I had another slide, but fair enough. As you are clearly recalling, we said about the sattvic happiness. What is sattvic happiness?
I think you explained it, which you were supposed to explain more. You said poison at the beginning.
Yes, there you go.
At the
end. Are you able to see this? Yes, sattvic happiness is poison in the beginning and nectar in the end. And tamasic or false happiness is nectar in the beginning and poison in the end. Isn't it?
Yep.
Now,
yes,
if you operate on the mind, you must understand the nature of the mind. The mind doesn't give you a choice. So it goes purely based on impulses. That's how the structure of the mind is. So the powerful structure of the mind, it has got desires, it has got impulses, it has got likes and dislikes. Also, we say it is also the root of desires. Now, it doesn't matter that part, but the mind is of an impulsive nature. It lacks rationality, so it just goes on what impulsively it gets, the thought props up, and it is easily drawn by the external stimuli. It doesn't rationalize. Am I doing the right thing? Is it sattvic? Is it tamasic? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it the true happiness, false happiness? None of that comes in. The mind just flows. So if you give yourself a license to the mind without the intervention of the intellect, what would happen? You may end up invariably choosing the false happiness in life. So when they say don't, or rather operate with self-control, which means don't act on your likes and dislikes and don't create further. What does it indicate? That, as you rightly said to begin with, that there must be a control over your mind. Now we are asking, what does it mean that what do I contact in the world? You pick up that which is in the most beneficial to you. You establish contact with the right sense object. You establish a right contact with the sense object. I'm saying two things here. You establish a right contact. You establish a contact with the right sense object. And you also establish a right contact with the sense object. So you pick the right object and you establish a right contact. There are two things. I may pick up the right object, but if I don't have a right contact, what happens? Sir,
Yep.
Simple thing like, let's say I like masala vade. Masala vade may be good, right contact, but I have to have right contact also, no? The same masala vade, if I have 1 or 2, it's good. But if I have 10 or 20, what would happen?
Create a problem. Yep.
Serious problem, not ordinary problem. Now, this is where you need the intellect to come and control the rush from you to the objects of the world. Self-control. They're not saying don't enjoy. They're not saying don't contact. They're only saying choose the right sense object and establish the right contact. And it is not quantitative, please. It is not quantitative. They're not saying only have 2.5 masala vade, or have 1.5 masala dosa, or have 3 idlis. That is self-control. Anything beyond that, it is sense indulgence. It is not quantitative. You got to get this right. Many people have a wrong concept that sense contact itself is sense indulgence. Sense contact is not sense indulgence. It is not determined by contact, nor is it determined by quantum. It is determined by what establishes the contact, and nobody knows what establishes the contact except me. Am I operating on the mind or am I operating on the intellect? I know, not you. But the moment you see me contacting sense object, you will say, look at that person. He calls himself a spiritual person. He calls himself a Swami, and look at him, what he's doing. He's whining and dining in the marketplace. What sattvic life is he leading? You will be very quick to brand someone as sensual and a materialistic person just by purely determining by what I'm contacting, where am I contacting, or how much am I contacting. This does not determine, this is not the definition. And you will easily worship a person who puts on a robe and puts on a self-imposed withdrawal from the world and punctuates his contact. You will very freely, the most ignorant person will bow down and say, here is a spiritual man, look at him. He's putting on a robe and he's away from the world. He's not in the marketplace. He is a spiritual person without even knowing where his mind is. Is it not possible that he could be not in the marketplace, but his mind is very much there? Where? In the marketplace? Is it not possible? Therefore, the real takeaway of the 64th verse is, he says, a man of self-control is moving among sense objects. That is the key. So you got to revisit your understanding of what is self-control. It is not a qualitative, nor is it quantitative. It is measured by what establishes the contact with the object. So is there a control? So I do not know whether I have clearly clarified what you're asking. You make the right contact, you choose the right object, and you have a right contact with the right sense object. Because if you have a wrong contact with the right sense object, the same thing will become poison.
So therefore, is it fair to state that for every individual, the quantum, if you were to use the broad word of a quantum, could be different?
There is no mention of quantum. There's no discussion of quantum. So just to highlight this to a point of absurdity, just to make people think, the Shastras have gone to a point of absurdity. And we have often said, and perhaps most apt to mention it here, Lord Krishna, the life of Lord Krishna is, if you read the story part, not the philosophy, which is the Gita, the story of life Lord Krishna, he is painted as a person who has associated with 16,000 women, gopis. Intentionally, they have painted that picture. Symbolic though, don't take it literally. But even if you take it literally, the title Lord Krishna was given as a Nitya Brahmachari, an eternal celibate. Are you joking? Are you kidding? There's some kind of confusion here, that we have to redefine celibacy here. A person who's said to have associated with so many women is called an eternal celibate. Just to drive home this point, it is not the object, not the quantum. Even Lord Rama didn't get the title. He only had Sita and he only accepted Sita. He didn't say, oh, Sita is away, let me find an alternative temporarily. Yeah, temporary or permanent is only one person who exists in life. That was not life of Lord Krishna. Story-wise, don't get me wrong. What it, in fact, what literally it means is 16,000 gopis means 16,000 thoughts he had. He dealt with so many thoughts. He managed through everything. He sailed through all these multifold thoughts and desires. He was a true master of them. Symbolically, you can expand on it, but it is not quantitative. And if you say, sir, one example is okay. Second example, they also talk of sage Durvasa. Harishji, what is sage Durvasa known for? You need to have right person explain right concepts. You know, sometimes you don't have the knowledge of all. I don't have all knowledge, you know. I'm limited knowledge I have. You find me repeating the same examples, same things. So you will have a new dimension to it. Say Durvasa, Harishji.
Guruji, there are two contexts in which Durvasa is referred to. One is that
you know the context I'm asking of.
I know, that is, I will come to it next. He had a tremendous temper. So he used to go into a rage. It was very easy to enrage Durvasa and get a curse from Durvasa. The second thing, was that he was a connoisseur of good food. And, he loved. I mean, people used to want to feed Durvasa.
Correct. See, in fact, there's a small story. I don't know whether you know, whether you've heard of it. I may have quoted it here and there. The story was that Sage Durvasa was passing by on his travel, and he was housed in a small ashram, you know, on the outskirts of the palace of the kingdom. So the queen and the king, they wanted to go and pay their respects to the passing Swami who was visiting their place. So a small entourage, especially when you want to visit a man of knowledge or anybody you want to pay respects, a few gifts were being taken to offer their respects. And the river, which was on their path, was actually, there was heavy water flow. So it was practically impossible for the entourage to actually cross through because there's no other bridge. So they were actually blocked on their way. And suddenly a thought came, and they went up to Lord Krishna and asked, the Lord, you know, we want to pay our respects to the great sage Durvasa, but we have this obstacle. Can you please give us a solution, because you always have something? He said, simple. What are you so worried about? You go up to the river, and with utter respects and humility, just say this: if sage Durvasa is a Nitya Upavasi, please show the way. As you heard from Harishji, sage Durvasa was, Harish, sage Durvasa was known to have had great love for
Hariom
food.
Guruji. Yeah.
Hariom. He was a food lover. Huh? So you get that
Yes.
right. Hmm?
Yes.
Sage Durvasa was a food lover. And Upavasi means what? Harish, what does the word Upavasi mean?
Sorry, I'm sorry, Guruji. I did not get that. I did not get that. What
Good.
Upavasi means.
I knew you didn't get that. Since I asked you. So Upavasi means the one who fasts. Nitya Upavasi means eternal faster. So it's a little a strange paradox or a dichotomy. How can a person who loves food be given a title as a Nitya Upavasi? But they said, Krishna, are you joking? I know you are full of pranks and fun and wit and mischief, but don't tell me that Sage Durvasa is a Nitya Upavasi. You want a solution, go and do that. So they just followed. And to their surprise, the river parted ways. They crossed, they went, they paid their respects. All the food they offered, as they knew, the Sage Durvasa had all by himself. They gave enough food for him and everybody else, but he alone had everything. But they were so happy to have the darshan, and on their way back, now again they come back, the river was again full. And it was the evening hour, the river was more, it swelled up, and that it is humanly impossible to cross. Now they didn't know what to do. They only had to go back. A man of wisdom was Durvasa. So they went up to the sage and asked, Swami, it was nice to visit you, but we want to go back home. But please let us a way out. Then he said, okay, go up to the river and pray. If Lord Krishna is a Nitya Brahmachari, please show the way. I thought Krishna was mad. You are also same category. What is going on? No, please. Because they knew the life of Lord Krishna, 16,000 gopis. He said, you want to go back home? Go and say this. Again, they went and bowed down to the river and said, if Lord Krishna is a Nitya Brahmachari, please show the way. The river parted way and they got back home. Now, why this long and short story? The message, Sriniji, is this: spiritual path is not determined by contact with sense object, nor is it defined by the quantum. You got to redefine your concept of spirituality today, this moment now. But that doesn't mean, oh, thank you very much, I have a license to contact, to acquire and possess and enjoy and go all out. No. We are talking of the state. The path is different. But once you establish it, doesn't matter. You get it? But how do you establish the contact? Is you got to use your intellect. So don't operate freely on whatever your mind craves for. The moment you acted on the mind, you violated self-control. It's not what you're contacted, it's not how much you contacted. The moment you contact on the mind, first violation. Does that make sense? So it is not a quantitative thing. And the second is, do not create fresh likes and dislikes. Now, how does one go about creating new likes and dislikes? Who has an answer for that? Harish, can I bring you back?
Yes, Guruji. We create fresh likes and dislikes because when we have indulged on some sense object, we relish it and we linger on it. So we want more of it. So we think there's more to enjoy the sense contacts.
Absolutely right. So when the mind tendency after the experience, the tendency of the mind, it's a natural tendency. The natural tendency of the mind after the experience is to go and relive what do you call that? That process of repeating mentally is called, okay, you mentally rehearse or you mentally reproduce the experiences of joy you had after the experience is done and dusted. That exercise of the mind, which you do, creates fresh desires. And the technical term we call after the experience is known as lingering, as Harish rightly put it. So you tend to linger of your past experiences. These two is anti-spiritual. And the solution to that is, what is the solution to that? You got to learn to live in the present. Rajima, you got to learn to live in the present, my dear. I don't know how many of you are in the present. The most difficult thing to do is to keep your mind where your hand is. Means the job you're doing now, in the present, in the current moment. But where is the mind? Mind is never with you. Mind is somewhere else all the time. Now, he is not saying all that, but he is putting it in his own language. Is it the same as contentment? Kamalji is posed something to me. He's asking, what is it same as contentment, Ji?
When you have contentment, you do not raise new desires, and which gives more peace to your mind or makes your mind more sattvic, and which again leads to more purification of mind or more control of mind.
You can say that, you can very much say that, but here the emphasis is on controlling the mind's tendency. How much ever contented you are, the nature of the mind doesn't change, isn't it? The nature of the mind is it operates on impulses. So it is an awareness of the intellect to constantly keep a check to the mental nature, which is to act impulsively and post-action licentiously linger. Unnecessary, isn't it?
Definitely. The reason I was asking because many times we hear in the scriptures about this word. So I was just trying to clarify that whether it is the same thing or it is another aspect of our mental condition, because it's also related to our, impressions in our mind, and how we, if we are contented, then no more impressions are created, which really lead to the new desires.
You're not wrong in the argument. As I've said, you're right. But the approach to understanding this is from a point of control over the mind here. Obviously, when you're contented also, you don't You don't generate fresh desires because you're satisfied. You don't want more. You're right to say that. But again, that is a contentment is a state you reach. The difference in the two arguments is, or the points is, contentment is a state, control is a practice. That's the subtle difference you got to identify, because self-control is a constant exercise, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because your mind's nature will ever remain that it runs into the past, it's worried of the future, there is certain insecurity, it constantly troubles and disturbs your mental peace. Your contentment is your spiritual level, but the nature to control the mind is the abhyasa. That's where the growth comes in. So one is the cause, other is the effect. So self-control is the cause, contentment is the effect in the same context.
Okay. Thank you, Guru. Thanks.
Right, perfect. So you should draw this connection, perhaps, then you will get a little clarity. Okay. So one happily takes to carnal pleasures. Later on, the body becomes diseased. So we said the consequences of, yes, Sushma Ma. Gayatri Ma, did you send her the
Yes, Guruji. I sent her first on this thing on a computer. Then she said she's operating on mobile, so that also I sent it to her.
Okay. Yes, Ma, no problem. Sushma Ma, you want to clarify something? We can't hear you, Ma, please.
Will somebody unmute me, or can I unmute myself?
Now we can hear you, Ma. We can hear you now.
I was thinking when you said, "No, don't create new likes and dislikes." Now, can't I take it even positively? I was leading a life more of worldly pleasures or Rajasic life. And then I come in contact and I start contact with more spiritual people, good people, sattvic people, and I'm introduced to some satsang, and I start listening to more satsangs. And the fact, won't the effect be, I mean, it could be or could not be, but I would say creating a new, I may create a new liking for the spiritual life, or listening to, spending more time listening to satsangs, reading the scriptures, rather than spending my time going for parties and getting parties and things, which I used to do. But can't my likes change in some of the satsangs? They keep the company of good people. So what does that mean? Because you're influenced by them. And if you're keeping the company of good people, they are probably not spending very worldly life. So I feel, won't it have an effect on us?
Right. See, there's a difference between keeping satsang vis-a-vis allowing the mind to indulge or linger. The difference is the choice to keep the company of the good is made by the intellect. So even if I am lingering on my positive experiences, it's only going to create fresh desires and going to bind me, isn't it? Any desire is going to bind you. I thought so. I thought there was, she's back. I think you were lost for a brief moment. I'll repeat what I said, Ma. You know, the difference between the choice to maintain satsang vis-a-vis allowing the mind to indulge or linger. The difference is one, you're operating on the mind, the other is operating on the intellect. But even with reference to the satsang, if your mind constantly lingers, you are also developing an attachment or a bondage to it. So whether it is the right or wrong, if you allow the mind to linger, it is only developing a bondage, which is not recommended by the Shastras. Because it will not liberate you, it will still bind you.
But even if I'm going the positive way, then also it will bind me. I'm trying. I mean,
Yes,
I'm sure if I take my own example, what I was 20 years ago, I was spending more time in the worldly pleasures, and gradually as I came in contact with people, with satsangs, with a guru, my thinking started changing and I stopped enjoying what I was enjoying before. And I started enjoying or spending more time, or even intellect said, this is better for you. And one changed according to that.
So what
For something better.
Correct. So the language you're using is all intellect. You're not operating on the mind. You're not operating emotionally. It was not an emotional decision. It was a very rational decision. You saw a lot of good in it. You are ready to embark on a journey. So it was a conscious decision. It's a rational element. It's not an impulsive, emotional hookup. You didn't suddenly get hooked up, or it was not a mere whiff of emotion. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
But if it's emotional, then it can easily dislodge you also. It can easily dislodge you. You don't get grounded. And also there are, as I said, the consequences of there's a bondage. You develop unnecessary attachment to whatever you're doing. It could be the person you're involved with, it could be the activity you're involved with, it could be the sadhana you're doing. That's not the objective. You have got into this spiritual journey to evolve, to elevate yourself, not to, let's say, just going by the example, let's say 15, 20 years ago, when you were in the worldly activities of social life, you had social attachments. You had friends and having those who could entertain and you could find company in those people, with those people. Now, what you have done, you have switched attachment to the social circle, you have developed attachment to the spiritual circle. I would say, what's the difference? The Shastras actually say there's no difference. In fact, they go about cautioning and saying attachment to the spiritual world is more deadlier than attachment to the material world. It's like one is ordinary glue, other is super glue. You know, sometimes when you are dealing with this strong adhesives, super glue and all, sometimes even a little residue or some section of it gets stuck to your finger. It's so difficult to get out of it. So it's very difficult to get out of attachment to the spiritual world. Ordinary glue, you can wash it off, perhaps it will go off easily, but not super glue. So they say you must be far more careful when you're in the spiritual world, because the objective is to evolve, not get bound. So I think it is important to make the intellect come in and constantly choose the right experience and how you contact it rightly as well. That's why when I answered Sriniji, sorry, Ma?
You said the middle paths, and that is the correct thing to do.
Yes, the middle path. Yes, the middle path. Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Guru.
Right. Most welcome. Yes, Hirenji.
Yeah, Guruji, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Yeah, when you say it, I think the discussion just happened with the lady, I forgot her name already, Susmaji.
Yes.
Yeah. When you experience something based on your mind, right? And then I decide, okay, I like something, I dislike something, that is still not rational. Okay. Is it something that, like, I mean, initially I thought that likes means something good, dislikes it something bad, but it is not probably, because it is based on my mind, not on intellects. So all likes and dislikes will be my preference only. So if I want to continue in that path, what I like and what I dislike, it will still will be in the realm of mind. Intellect is not coming there at all. So I think with this discussion, I'm clear now about it, that we will have to move to the intellect level to decide that what is good or bad. That is a decision to be made. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay.
And every experience, your intellect has to come and decide, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Every walk of the way. But I do not know whether you understand the consequences of acting on the mind. What is the reason why you should not operate on mind?
Well, it doesn't give you any rationale of
So
doing.
what? So what? It is not rational, but what is the danger on operating on mind? What's the danger?
Well, consequences will be, generally it will be always bad. Say like if I am in a sort of an argument with somebody, if I act on somebody telling me something just from the mind without giving time to rationalize it, it normally escalates, right? And that is where the intellect should come, not necessarily it comes, which is the most difficult thing to do, actually. And that is how it will happen. It will escalate, or rather, it will deteriorate the situation always.
Yeah. Correct. You're right. But I will clarify this. Think along, sir. Let me engage with others, but I'll be answering this question, examining it. What are the consequences of operating on the mind? What are the consequences? Why should you not operate on the mind? We are just saying, do not act on likes and dislikes. Do not create fresh likes and dislikes. But the question is, why should I not do that? Why should I not operate on the mind? What are the consequences? Yaredi Garu.
Pranam Guruji. Can we draw in a conclusion from the discussion in a simple equation saying that mindfulness is equal to intellect in action always? Because when we want to subdue the power of mind.
Sir, I know you want to conclude so that we move on with the text. I got the message, sir.
No.
Very, very smartly, he said, conclusion to this discussion is mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Right. No.
And mindfulness, when we're talking about a mindfulness, is nothing but just subdue the mind, put intellect in action always. Is it, of course, practicality and non-practicality is the second part. And equation is that simple.
It is very simple to say so. Yeah, being mindful of the mind is operating on the intellect, yes. Which I would say, mind the mind.
Mind.
the mind is being mindful of the mind, which is nothing but the intellect.
Okay, that's great.
Okay. Right. But
Thanks, Guruji.
yes, sir. But why should you not? What is the danger in operating on the mind? Vijayji.
Pranam Guruji. I was thinking, and if we cut in the cycle, if we cut the craving and lingering and live at the present moment, we have the options to do two things: respond to an impulse from outside, at that current moment in the right way, or whatever comes to our mind at that point of time and do it, which means we go back to kind of childhood and then you live for the present moment. Now, how much we will indulge at that present moment, there is no control as it is, because it's by definition will become an impulsive life, full of impulses. So first there, I think we need intellect for that. Second is that a lot of a series of momentary, continuous momentary enjoyments also are likely to create more cravings in the future, more desires in the future. And third is, I think there won't be any purpose in life if you live only in the moment. I mean, if there is no intellect, there is nothing to guide. I mean, we will only live always only at the moment what mind tells us, with no intellect and no guidance to our own purpose. There won't be any purpose. That's what I felt.
I would want to actually comment to what lastly you said. See, in fact, the solution to not lingering or not acting on the mind's tendency of likes and dislikes is to operate and live in the present, which is to live moment to moment. So it is that control of the intellect to keep the mind in the present, which means you must end perception with perception. There are two things. You must end perception with perception. I had a certain perception experience. I have to end it there so that I move on to this perception, this experience. I end this there so that I move on to the next experience. That's the only way I'll be able to live in the present. But the problem is I'm not ending perception with perception. I'm dragging that into this and drag this into that. So it is spillover, which is not right. So in fact, when you live in the moment, it doesn't mean you don't have a plan for the future. It doesn't mean you don't have a roadmap. It doesn't mean you don't have a purpose. It is to optimize the present moment. So just when we are discussing this particular concept today, right now, you may question, how is this concept in the context of the verse or in the context of philosophy or spirituality? Man, why are you going out of context, I would say? Just let us understand this per se. Are you in this moment now? If I understand this, and if I understand the next concept and the next concept and so on and so forth, you will get a totality of what we are trying to understand. Everything fits in its place, isn't it? It's like a jigsaw puzzle. Yes, sir.
Guruji, my basic response was that, living in a moment is, is possibly, I mean, I have no question of any doubts or any misgivings or anything from my mind.
Not at all.
However big it sounds anyway. Is that unless you have a constant intellect overriding it and telling you, okay, fine, this moment you enjoyed it, you're good. Next moment, something else will come. Whatever you want to do, but then don't do it. The intellect should be the constant thread all the time. Otherwise, it will again likely to go out of bounds of control, which is what the only thing I meant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have one doubt, Guruji, here is that all these seem to be perfectly all right when we talk about things concerning the individuals, himself or herself. But any experiences which concerns others, like can I do something momentarily, which if your intelligence is your business, what controlled or otherwise. But the moment it sort of affects someone else, the
something else starts telling us what to do, isn't it? We cannot be purely going by our mind. Then I think the role of intellect should be higher as to what is right and what is wrong.
I don't understand what you're asking, sir, to be frank.
In the sense, you are saying that, you know, what is good for me need not be good for someone else. Agree.
Yes.
No issue.
Yes.
And what I enjoy it is someone may not enjoy it. But what I think is right, you know, in indulgence, so long as it concerns only me, it's fine. But if it affects others, this will not be valid. Should it be governed by that too?
I'm still struggling. I'm sorry.
I mean, can I do whatever I can do to, you know, which would affect others too?
No, see, what is right for you may not be right for others. For example, you are in this journey of seeking this wisdom. It's not necessary that everybody in your family, in your home, your social circle should necessarily toe to you. They may not be interested. Now, how can you rightfully impose this on them? Can you? No, you may talk about it, you may recommend them, and you say it's a fascinating journey, and leave it to them to appreciate it, to get introduced themselves to it and pick it up. But you can't be the custodian of their conscience and say, this is right for me, therefore it has to be right for you. No, we can't do that. I'm not saying you are doing that or you would recommend that. So therefore, what comes into the picture, if I understand you rightly, what is right for me?
Sorry, no, I didn't mean that way. I mean, I'm not talking about imposing my value systems or my beliefs onto somebody else. My actions affecting others. I mean, it's a single person. Instead of becomes a single person, it becomes multiple persons. When it becomes a society, you know. Then it is my actions are also governed by the rights and wrongs of the effect on others. That's what I meant. I didn't mean, you know, imposing anything on others. Then the whole thing becomes, the role of intellect becomes more important in terms of what I can do and what I can't do.
See, the beauty of a human life is the free will. We have the freedom to do what we want, but that free will has to be punctuated with intellect. It's like we have the freedom. You get onto your car, you start driving, you have the freedom to go wherever you want to go. But whenever you're driving, that freedom is always punctuated with rules and regulations.
Which is what I mean.
Yes. So the freedom to drive punctuated with the rules and regulations of traffic. As long as you drive, nobody is questioning where you want to go. You follow the rules and do what you want to do, where you want to go. So as long as you're acting, you have the freedom to act, but act with the principles which govern a human life. And if you do that, you're not wrong. You're not wrong to go wherever you want. How you go about is what the law comes in. So that way, the conscience, your intellect, which is your convictions, and if you are true with your intellect and your conviction by your conscience, you can choose to do whatever you choose to do. It is not going to intrude into others' free will of their choices, isn't it? It may be an apparent chaos, but still everything is going on systematically, isn't it? Okay, sir? Right. Yeah, I think before I get to Setuji, JPK Ragaru, yes, sir, please.
Jai Gurudev.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar. Namaskar.
So the previous subject, which is very important, that is like, you know, the type of is one which we call that Ahalya, Draupadi, Sita, Tara, Mandodari, Radha, Panchakanyam, Smariti Nityam, Mahapatganasana. the Kanya, how they say the Kanya of this Ahalya or Draupadi having 5 husbands and Sita, of course, that is Sita is also as a husband Rama. This is where Lord Krishna, you said there, Sahabrahmachari, like that, Madhurvasa is Nitya Upasi. All these things where this subject is more important to speak more about clarifying how they are, the present conditions there. Ahalya, she wanted, even though wanted Indra to have the Bhoga, Draupadi, the 5 husbands. So why they call it their Kanya? So on this subject, which I like to know more about it. How they call?
Why they were called, whether be it Nitya Brahmachari or Nitya Upavasi, or you call, in the context you talk about Draupadi, even though she had 5 husbands, she's called a Kanya. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Right.
See, it's because, the message they are trying to drive home is these people have lived a life where they had no value for sense object nor sense indulgence, because they were so established in the higher values. In fact, even in the Shastras, they call who is this King Janaka? King Janaka was said to be a man of renunciation. Sir, you are a king. You are living in royalty, and yet you are a man of renunciation. They call him a man of great vairagya, a tyagi. And yet he was living in a luxurious palace. He was living a life of royalty. Now, this is what they're trying to say. Spiritual status is defined by the mind where it is established. Point 1, where is your mind established? Your mind is always established in the higher, as a result of which they had no value for the lower. So the value they gave to these worldly pleasures or enjoyments was 0. And it's because of their no value for it, they had conquered their sense weakness. They conquered their mind. Therefore, since they have truly mastered the mind and the senses, they all were given these titles. And once you have conquered and mastered the mind, it doesn't matter what life you live. Until then, you got to be careful. Mark the words, until you master the mind, you got to be very careful. And once you have mastered it, it's like a person who knows driving, he doesn't have to be rigid, no? Like when you see people who are learning to drive, they are so stiff. They're so almost hugging the steering, That's why I always, those who are, especially ladies, they all the time hugging the steering and driving. I said, why do you have to hug the steering and drive? Why can't you sit back, relax and enjoy that process of driving? They're so tensed, almost, in fact, they don't have no movement also, no offense, as Reddy Garu, I'm taking your approach. No offense to ladies, I also will say that,
Yeah. Is a true intellect freedom.
Yes. So you get that, sir. So the intellect is so well established in the higher that the mind has no value for anything. It is truly risen above the push and the pull of the senses. It is no value for it. So you have conquered the mind. Because they have conquered the mind, they have reached that such exalted state, which is described by giving these titles to them,
That means whoever is self-controlled, where the intellect operates, not
perfect
mind.
Self-control. Perfect self-control. Absolutely right, sir. They operate only on the intellect, not on the mind. You have spelled it out. Yes, that is so. And they are trying to make us understand by contradiction. See, this is not easy to communicate. The fact that we are talking so much of it, it's not easy to understand what they're conveying. Therefore, they They contradicted through examples just to make you think, so that you stand up and take note. Oh, this is what that means. Huh? Oh my God, I didn't know that. Otherwise, it would have been simple, quantitative, qualitative requirements to live a life of self-control, which is not so. Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Namaskar. Namaskar. Right, sir. Sedramanji.
Hari Om Guruji.
Yes, sir.
Your question was, what is the danger of operating on mind? That was the question you posed.
Correct, sir.
And my answer is, danger is very much there, and it is extreme. We suffer, it even destroys us, and we pay a heavy price when we operate solely on mind. And the solution is intellect intervention, but at least my intellect is very weak. First, I have to strengthen my intellect. That is spirituality. So I listen to all this and reflect and contemplate. My intellect will strengthen. Then only I will have intellect, because intellect will not come as if whenever we call it. Intellect has to be strong. That's my take.
So it's like he came like a principal. Sir, you asked this question, please, this is the answer. You people are talking too much here and there. You know? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No. Very, very right. Absolutely right, sir. Absolutely right. In fact, some people go to the extent, if death is the inevitable end, as he says, although death is the end in this world, why should I care? Why should I put in so much effort of living a life of self-control? If death is anyway, then why should I give up indulgence? A fellow who lives a life of celibacy also is going to die. A fellow who lives a life of a playboy also is going to die. So what is the worry? Let me enjoy, no? Why should I unnecessarily punish myself? Isn't it, Harishji? He's suddenly opened up, woke up, and he started reacting to that statement.
Yes, Guruji, because that's what is in Greek mythology was referred to as Epicurean. It's about epicure, which is, and it is symbolized by eat, drink, and be merry, because for tomorrow we die. That is the phrase. So I concentrated on the first couple. Which is eat and drink.
Now, so what is the rationale? You know, just because I've heard from a few here and there, it's I don't know when I'm going to die, man. Let me do what I like. Let me eat what I like. Let me do what I like. Why should I punish myself at this point? They think living a life of self-control is punishment. It is actually not a punishment. It's actually a blessing, isn't it? Yes, Sedramanji.
I just wanted to share. See, when I was in business, I was taking care of marketing. And when I used to meet customers, sometimes I used to be silent, sometimes I used to talk a lot. But whenever I used to talk a lot, I paid a heavy price for it. I was going by mind. I was talking about what price is comfortable to me and all, even before he asked. But when I listened to him and when I made him to talk, he became impulsive, my customer. He was telling me what price is, he want a high price is also acceptable because of my good quality. And because of market forces, I was thinking I was ready to give him a lower price, and I just carried away. He made me to talk, and my mind, I never used intellect. So every stage in life I have seen, whenever I lost temper, I paid a heavy price. Everywhere I pay a price when I am using mind. It really destroys its same way indulgence also, food, every place, every instant, mind is highly destructive. We pay a heavy price. So this discussion is of great relevance to everyone, because everyone says be in present, but it is not easy. When we do even rituals and mechanical, our mind simply travels here and there. We are unable to focus, concentrate. So strengthening the intellect and using the intellect, it does wonders for everyone.
Yes, yes. Hirenji, have you got all the necessary answers?
Yeah, I got the answers, definitely. And I feel that I always know about it. But when the time comes to control my mind, it's a lot of times it becomes very difficult. But as Setramanji is saying, that keep working at it, keep remind yourself. Yeah, it had been difficult all along. It's a struggle.
Yeah. So, as everybody shared their experience and their wisdom on the need to operate on the intellect, and as you yourself understand the consequences on operating on the mind, but the challenge is for the intellect to come in at that moment and to be available to serve the purpose. So the crux of all this is to embark on a journey of development of the intellect. And that is, I always said that we keep reiterating, the intellectual development is when you start questioning the knowledge, when you start studying and reflecting these ideas on a daily basis, every morning, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. your time, not our time. You get up at your 5 a.m. and study for 1 hour. I get up at my 4 a.m. and study. Because what is 5 a.m. for me is 5 p.m. for you. So let's not do that. So I'm very, very specific here. So every morning, if you could do the study of questioning, examining, understanding, reflecting on these truths, that is the only exercise. I'm saying that is the only exercise that will develop the intellect, nothing else. And if you do not do that, you will have information and you will have knowledge, but you will not have the intellect. This is the difference between being well informed. You know this, it's not right, but you will not be able to refrain yourself from doing it because you don't have the intellectual strength. So the most important exercise you all should do, no two way about it. In fact, I will start putting conditions. If you don't get up and study, don't come for the classes. If there's a way, if I can do that, I will want to impose that. You got to get up in the morning and study. No point listening to lectures from others, but you must be ready to lecture to yourself. And that lecturing to yourself is reflection. When you do that, that is where you start developing the intellect. You start influencing the mind. I appeal to you all, I beg to you all, if not for your sake, for my sake, please get up and study. You may get up in the morning and curse me. Oh, for this fellow, I have to get up and do this. Never mind, you may curse me because it's the most unpleasant thing to do. But still do it. I tell you, it is the real cream. The real sadhana is in the Brahma Muhurtam. You don't do that, nothing is going to change. You're only adding more knowledge, but no wisdom is only going to cause a lot of concern. Because you know more and you don't live up to it. It's going to cause a lot of mental anxiety as well. Okay, sir. So the exercise which gives you the wisdom and the intellect is digestion of this knowledge, which is done early hours only. The rest of the day, you could carry on with the various activities, but early morning is not a compromise. It's a must. It is a must. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Right, sir. Reddy Garu, lastly, please. In
Sorry,
conclusion-
Guruji, once again raising my hand here, requesting.
In conclusion, sir.
Yes. Here we have been talking the mind as a evil and the devil and absolutely like a villain all through the discussion. In fact, it's one of my favorite subjects. I'm sure the day is done for me, opening with that. But is it not, we're talking about a mind is nothing but thoughts and emotions. There is a positive side of that also. We have been talking about controlling, curtailing, creating quite a lot of disciplinary measures to bring checkmate the mind. But do we 100% are we making a statement saying that is absolutely mind is nothing but is a wrongdoing thing? I mean to say, I'm just drawing in a parallel that. Is there any positive aspect of it? Hope I could able to explain my point.
Yes, yes. It almost, as you rightly said, it might tantamount to saying that mind is a negative entity, intellect is a yes, right force or the guiding factor. No, it is not. It's not suggesting that. It's like saying a parent should control the child. But does that mean the child is always wrong? No.
That's true.
A child is a bundle of energy. It needs to give direction so that it optimizes what energy it has. Also, it doesn't go about doing any damage to itself and others.
Okay.
So intellect is only to harness the energy which is there. The same energy, when it is directed, produces phenomenal results. So the mind is not to be construed as a negative entity. It becomes negative when it's not controlled. So mind without control is your devil. But mind, when it's harnessed, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Like we all, so in the context, since you said, whenever we talk of the mind and the intellect, we take the example of mind is like the flowing rivers. Remember, the mind is like the flowing rivers and the intellect is like the banks of the river. The banks have to be strong and well built so that it contains the river well within its banks. But when the water overflows the banks are weak and can't contain the river, which is a blessing, actually becomes a curse because it starts inundating your homes and fields and destroys your livestock, your livelihood. It destroys normalcy. But can you say, is the river a curse? No, the river became a curse because it was not contained in the banks. So the mind, which is not controlled, creates hell. But when the mind, when it's controlled, it creates a heaven. Therefore, the great Vivekananda said, conquer your mind, you have conquered the world. So it's all within. You got to learn to inject the necessary awareness, mindfulness. Be mindful of what your mind is up to. It's just that awareness. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Guruji.
Right, sir. Thank you. Yes, Hariji.
Hari Om Guruji.
Yes, sir.
Shastra repeatedly tells that the integration of the mind and intellect is the key. We cannot always paint mind as the devil. It is the integration which you have taught us, the Jnana Chakshu, the eye of wisdom, that is an homogeneous mixed blending of the mind and the intellect. The intellect, if it works without letting the mind participate, then it is equal to arrogance. And if we let only mind operate without the involvement of intellect, then that becomes madness. So it is an homogeneous blending of mind and intellect is the key. You cannot paint one is, or I should not paint. Mind is the devil and the intellect is superior.
Absolutely.
Nature is superior to the other.
Yes. It's essentially, as you rightly said, integration of both. And also there's a danger, Reddy Garu, of intellect which can become aggressive bad. You can have the intellect which can, example, the Shastras take the Mahabharata, we talk of aggressive badness is Duryodhana. He had a manipulative intellect, but he was so shrewd and manipulative that he used all the resources for his own self-advancement, for his own selfish purposes. So even that intellect is not good. Like you're using your intellect, how not to pay taxes or how much less to pay taxes. How can I hide my black money? For that also you need intellect, isn't it? Reddy Garu, not that I'm asking you, I'm not trying to implicate anything here, please. Don't get me wrong.
You're perfectly right, Guruji, because
What?
again,
What am I right?
Yeah, making a statement that using like, yeah, sorry.
You got to be very clear when you say I'm right, because I said many things here, you know.
For example, Guruji, we come across, again, do apologies to anybody who are in the chartered accountants in this group, but I come across with my little experience in the life, and who are the chartered accountants are started in an industry. They have a real good intelligence and intellect with respect to the finances and everything, but always that is being misdirected. I come across quite a lot of companies. I can say 6 to 7 out of 10, I've seen those companies never taken off because the intentions are something totally different. Again, most probably the intentions may play a vital role of directing your intellect in a right direction.
Absolutely. So therefore, you're right, very right, sir. So the intellect by itself can do a lot of damage. So you said the mind is construed negative. Here I'm portraying, or we are echoing, intellect itself can be
Exactly
in the wrong direction. Therefore, you need that which is above the mind and the intellect. Ramji, concluding remarks, sir. What is it that is above the mind and the intellect?
Hari Om Guru. Above mind and intellect is wisdom. If you are wise and use your wisdom, then you can integrate the whole thing and manage the thing within the banks. That is what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where here we are seeking this wisdom, isn't it, sir?
Yes.
I knew there's one person in this class who will say that word is you. That says that I came to you, sir. Namaskar. So it is that wisdom that brings the best out of your mind and the best out of your intellect and brings an integration of both. And then as Hariji said, it gives you the jnana chakshu, it gives you that eye of wisdom. And this is relevant in every experience. It's not something, it's only an exclusive category or a rare experiences. Every choice you make, every experience that you go into, you must have this clarity so that you don't pay the price of being driven purely on the impulse of their mind. Perfect. Srinji, all okay? Okay. We'll come back. We've done justice to the verse. We've talked about what indulgence does at the physical level. We spoke about last week. We spoke about neutralization. We spoke about acclimatization. We spoke about the diminishing value. So I didn't touch on it. I wanted to highlight on what it is to live a life of self-control. And I think we've done enough justice to the concept. Okay. Sorry, Sriniji. something?
Yes, I think last class you said you would like, I had a question on sattvic happiness. Why sattvic happiness should start with poison at the beginning, nectar at the end?
No, it's not that why it should start. That's how it is designed. All that is beneficial to you has a distasteful beginning. That's how life is, isn't it? You would never find junk food very unpleasant to begin with. You can never ask that. Any sensual indulgence is not unpleasant. It's always designed for your pleasure, for your instant gratification, for your palate satisfaction, for your sensual satisfaction, and that's why you're drawn to it.
The opposite I can understand. I'm talking the question is, when it's good for you, why does it have to be big? The beginning is always sour or poison in this case. That's the question I'm asking. I know the opposite is, initially it's as it says that instant gratification, pleasure immediately, therefore you get indulged. I get that point. I'm talking the contra to that. That's sattvic happiness. This contra, I mean, what you mentioned is the false happiness was where you start with nectar in the beginning and you have poison at the end. And then the sattvic happiness is where you start with the poison at the beginning with nectar at the end. I'm not, why does it that all sattvic happinesses have to start with poison at the beginning? For example, reading the Upanishad, for example, if you want to have, or Gita, it could be difficult. I'm not questioning that. Is that the construct of saying it's poison at the beginning?
Yes, it's poison in the sense it is not, you need to put an effort.
Yeah.
You need to cultivate a certain discipline. Like I said, I almost begged each one of you to get up in the morning and study sir, your morning tomorrow, get up at 4:30 in the morning. You may be used to getting up, but get up in the morning and get on to this ritual of studying every day. I tell you, it is not the most pleasant thing to do. It takes any exercise for that matter, because you're actually stretching your intellect. And it is the best thing people want to do. In fact, many people say the time they get the sleep is between 4 and 6, That's the reason many people actually burgle at 4 o'clock in the morning. Many burglaries happen at that hour, you know that?
Mm-hmm.
So I can't give you a reason why is it, but that's how life is. We can't question the law of life. So the law of life is all that is beneficial to you is distasteful, is almost tantamounting to poisonous, because it goes against the natural thing, which is to seek pleasures. In that sense, it's against. It's almost against the flow of your senses, flow of the mind, which is to seek pleasure and comfort. More in that sense. Maybe you give a little more time, I'll think about and come back, sir. The question is too tough for me. Would you, sir, please? I beg you.
Sure.
Thank you. Please ponder, sir. We can't change the law of nature. This is how it is. And experience only reinforces the understanding. This is how it is. Life is that way. Sorry, Srinidhi, you're muted. Sorry.
I know we have extended, but I'll give you a thought why I may kind of disagree with this. I'm not questioning. I mean, there may be a different thought for this. That's all. Next class.
Please. No, it will be. We can start the session with your clarification. Okay, Ji. Right. Setu Ji, we have to conclude.
I'll take a second, madam. A second, Guruji. See this. What I feel is it is poison only for Rajasic and Tamasic in the beginning. Sattvic, who has already mastered, it is a pleasant, as you said, it has become a habit. So poison for those who have not yet. Once you master it, it is no more poison. That's my understanding. Yeah.
Indeed, it's only to begin with. It's only initially. Thereafter, it is heaven. It's nectarine. You're very right. But I don't think our Sriniviji is going to budge. So I have to do a little extra hard work and come back. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.